Hello, everyone. Welcome to eSight Vision Central, Household Chores with eSight Go, today on Friday, March 28th, 2025. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. We have a bunch of people showing up today, which is great. And I'm going to get started on our Vision Central event. So today for the agenda, we're going to go over some introduction and housekeeping. We'll then talk about the eSight Go MSRP, just to do a general overview of candidates for eSight Go, and then discuss household chores with eSight. So introduction. So this is live, so things might happen, and I might misspeak. There might be some technical issues, and so on. At the end, if you have questions and you want to raise your hand, you can press Control Shift and K on a PC or Command Shift and K on a Mac, and there's also a raise hand button on the Microsoft Teams to raise your hand at the end if you have a question. This session should only take 30 to 45 minutes. The eSight Go MSRP. The MSRP of the eSight Go is as follows. In the US, it's going to be $4,950, and in Canada, it's $6,600. Now, for this section here, just talking about candidates for eSight Go. As eSight Go coaches or eSight coaches, we're not, skilled at saying whether eSight can help someone or not. Just with the general, if someone has candidacy questions at the end, we can't cover that. But I can give you some general guidelines of who would be a good fit for the eSight Go. So eSight, good for those with an acuity of 2080 to 2600. Anything beyond 2600, it's a bit more hit and miss, whether it may be helpful or not. And if someone's vision is better than 2080, they probably won't see the benefits of eSight Go. eSight Go was originally designed for central vision loss, so addressing things like macular degeneration or Stargardt, but it does help with other conditions. To benefit from eSight Go, some functional peripheral vision is required. So if you have no peripheral vision, you may not get the image result that you want with the eSight Go device. eSight Go can assist in a variety of other visual conditions, but conditions that affect peripheral vision, such as glaucoma and retinitis pigmentosa, can be a bit more challenging to assist. We do have success with those with glaucoma and RP, but it is very individual based. That's just something to be aware of with those conditions. So let's get into the meat of the matter here, discussing household chores with eSight Go. And so we've got a variety of topics we're going to discuss using the eSight with doing some chores, and I hope people find this interesting. So first, we're going to talk about surface cleaning and vacuuming with Cosmo. So Cosmo, interested to hear how you use your eSight.
Yeah, well, it just so happens to be vacuum day for me, and the eSight helps quite a bit. The first thing I do when I do household chores is use the tilt function, and do that button a few times, and you get to tilt, and then the camera doesn't physically tilt, but digitally tilts down up to 12 degrees, and that's pretty significant. So right now I'm at 0 tilt, and I'm looking right at my camera. And if I tilt it down, -1, 2, 3, 4, now to look at my camera, I have to tilt my head back here. So the way I use that is now I don't have to crane my neck down to look at the carpet when I'm vacuuming. And here in the living room especially, we've got a little rug with a pattern. It makes it really hard for me to see anything on there, especially toys that the kids have left. So I've vacuumed up and jammed up my vacuum many times. So having the eSight to spot that stuff is really helpful. And also just dust. Without my eSight, I will do the best job I can vacuuming, and then my wife will come home and say, "Well, you missed that, and that." And having the eSight to see it makes me do a better job. Without the eSight, I'd literally have to get on the ground, lay down, and get a couple inches from the ground to be able to see anything. And for something like kitchen counters, that's not as big of a deal because I don't mind just bending over a little bit to be able to see it. But anything with the ground the eSight is a big help. Now I've got a pretty big head, so my eSight is comfortably secure on my head. I don't have any worries about it falling off, but it does come with a lanyard if you have a smaller head. And I can see how some people might be a little worried if they are bending over like this that it maybe will slide off. It's got nice grippy material on the back of the arms, and you can see they kind of pinch in a little bit. So they should fit comfortably on the majority of heads, but you can always put on that lanyard and cinch that up to help support it. But again, because of my big head, I don't use my lanyard. The tilt is invaluable. Contrast, I have a stove with a black glossy surface next to the burners, and so that's relatively easy to see. But I can turn up the contrast, and that makes the grime pop a little bit more and makes it easier to spot where I need to scrub a little bit harder. Doing the sink, one of my wife's pet peeves is gunk in the sink, and that's something I can't really see. And so I would let that build up, and it would drive her nuts. And so now I'll use the eSight to be able to see it, and that's a lot more fun than just feeling with my hand and feeling, ooh, that's gross, I got to scrub that. And it's a really rugged device. I'm really pleased with how we've made this, and so I really don't have any worries being mobile with it. I wear my nose piece as high as I can on my nose. I have it pinched in a little bit, and it's all the way up, and so that way I can have this underneath vision with my naked eye. And that's one thing that sets eSight apart, is the fact that you're not just glued into your screen. If you have one of those VR style goggles, all you can see is your screens. And so that's really helpful as I'm walking around vacuuming and using my naked eye to navigate, and then using the eSight to spot stuff when I need to. And, we've all, when you first get your eSight, you just got to try everything. And because we've all got our ways of getting through life without this kind of device. And so I've been vacuuming for years without it. And at first you might think, oh, it's more of a hassle to put it on and worry about the buttons and stuff. But it really is worth trying things out. And um, I, my wife has 24 cleaning bottles under the sink, and figuring out which one's which and reading the labels. And this is very helpful because the alternative is getting my cell phone out, opening up the magnifying glass, and then I've got to hold it in one hand and hold the bottle in the other. And the great thing about wearing this is your hands free. And so it makes it a lot easier. And that way I'm not using a degreaser to mop the floor or whatever other mistakes I could have made. And reading instructions. We have laminate floors, and I use the spray that's special for that, and then you use the dry mop. And I hired a cleaning person one time, and I said, hey, you know how to use that, right? And they said, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I kept going about my business. And he dumped the whole bottle in a bucket of water and used a wet mop on the laminate floors. And those sprays are expensive, and you're just supposed to go spray, scrub, scrub, scrub. And he dumped it in water and was using a wet mop all over the laminate floors, which is bad for it. So that was the last time I did a cleaning person, and now I do everything.
Good luck. Thank you very much, Carl. That's great. And one thing I'm going to add with the vacuuming, I find with the eSight, if there is anything that's ever, emptying containers and so much from the vacuum, I find the eSight's really good for that. If I can say, okay, that container's full, and then I'm going to empty it, I can use it to make sure I'm emptying it properly. Because I always find that challenging without the eSight. That's great. All right, next we're going to talk about using the washing machine and dryer with Jeanette.
Thank you, Tyler. Yep. So again, eSight is this very invaluable tool for use with machines that are non-tactile very much nowadays, like the washing machine and the dryer. Now, both my washing machine and dryers, they both have a program selector, which is a dial. And when you move the dial around, the option that you're selecting is basically highlighted because the light on the dial points towards whatever it is that you're selecting. So, for example, on the washing machine, I might select a normal wash. And so the light might be pointing up towards the sort of 12 o'clock position to the word normal, which of course I have to use my eSight to read that word normal. Now, a lot of washing machines will have a display window with the amount of time that the cycle takes. For example, you know, it might be 45 minutes or something like that. And that might be relatively easy for people to read with or without their eSight. However, what I find is the difficult part is once you've got onto the cycle that you want, there are usually some sub options. So what your temperature is going to be, what your spin level is going to be, and so forth. Those tend to be really small. They tend to be dotted on the washing machine or the dryer. And in my case, they're not specifically in a linear kind of row. They might be, you know, there might be an option at the bottom right that says, okay, how hot do you want your washing machine to be? Do you want to use eco temperature for the water? Do you want it warm? Do you want it hot? Do you want it cold? And then, you know, on the left, upper left, there might be a selector for the spin level. So, you know, you've got these tiny little boxes where you can select other options within the pre-programmed option. And that's where I find my eSight really comes in handy, because typically that writing is tiny, really small, and you've got these little lights everywhere that can pop on and pop off depending on what you're selecting. So I find that setting my eSight to a certain zoom level is really important, because that's going to give me the opportunity to be able to read the writing consistently on the washing machine. I also like to use the spot zoom item, where you can actually press, and this is on my remote control, I can actually press the little button on the top left and it zooms everything out temporarily, okay? And it allows me to put a little box that appears in the screen over the area that I want to look at. But it also gives me a good overview of what I'm seeing, especially if I'm using quite a lot of zoom. I can easily lose perspective of what I'm looking at, especially when you've got to the right of the dial on my washing machine, we have lots of different little buttons, lots of different little lights, lots of different little options. And if you're on a large level of zoom, you can struggle to find what it is you're actually looking at. So I like to use that spot zoom button on the remote control to just shrink everything back down to normal temporarily and have the little white box that appears. And so I can sort of move my head and put the white box over the area that I'm really interested in, and then let go, and then I'm returned to the zoom level that I was at before I pressed the button. So I find that that combination of using zoom and spot zoom, you know, I find that those are crucial for the washing machine. Same thing with the dryer. I find that, again, there's a dial on my dryer that enables me to select a particular program. I might want a delicate program for drying certain clothes, for example. So I will have to move my dial until it gets to delicates. And again, I'll have to read that with my eSight. Usually it's typically to the side of the dial. So you sort of have to find out where the option is written, and then you can read that with your eSight. And once I've selected that option, oftentimes I might want to tailor it a little bit. And again, usually to the right or to the left of the dial, depending on the type of washing machine that you've got, there are all these little buttons that are usually flush, or they're very, very mildly tactile, but they really give you no other information. You really have to read it. They're full of small writing. So again, once you select an option that you want for the main program, then you're presented with some sub options like how long do I want to dry the stuff for? How dry do I want the level? Do I want it very dry? Do I want to add a wrinkle free? Do I want to add something else? And again, for all of those, I like to use my eSight on a specific zoom level and use that spot zoom when I'm actually trying to get perspective on what I'm looking at. And the only other thing I would say is with the display windows, the print's usually nice and large, like you might see maybe 35 minutes or 42 minutes or however long it takes. That's not a big problem. The big problem is the small stuff that they don't allow you to sort of see just with the naked eye, or, you know, nothing's large, it's all just small with tiny little lights that light up and then, you know, go off according to what you're selecting. So yeah, so I would say in summary, zoom is important, the level of zoom, and also the ability to press the spot zoom so that you can quickly zoom out and get a perspective of what you're looking at.
Perfect. Excellent. And one thing I want to add with the machine that I have, I don't have buttons or LED panel, but I have dials that I can set. And the dials don't reset, so they don't move between loads and cycles. So one thing that I did with my eSight, it was really cool. It didn't matter to me what type of machine I bought. I was more buying it for the price of the appliance. And when I got it, I realized I could use the eSight, zoom in, utilize the contrast and so forth to set the dial, set the machine, and then I could leave it, and I wouldn't have to worry about it. They also, I could, you know, say if I have specific settings that I really like, I could set markings on my machine, and then okay, if the two red dots line up, it's on, say, you know, the power wash or the heavy soiled or whatever the preferences I prefer. So there is you know, another thing too where depending on type of machine, you might just need to reset once and you can set it. If you're not going to really change it for different settings, you're good to go. And
Nice.
thank you, Jeanette. That was great.
Nice.
Yeah. All right, so next I'm going to talk about animal enclosures. So with this topic, I'm going to talk about a specific type of animal, but the eSight is extremely helpful for this. So I have two cats and I have a pet snake. And my pet snake is a ball python, and he lives in a terrarium that's downstairs in my basement. And with the snake, or his habitat, basically had wood mulch, wood kind of like chips at the bottom of his tank that are dark, and then he has two hides and two little caves that he can go in, various little fake logs that he can crawl around and go under, and he had a water dish. And besides that, you know, that's what he occupies. So he has lots of little spots that he can hide in and that he can move around. And he's not a small snake. He's about 5 feet long. And he's probably at his thickest, probably about 2 inches, 2 inches round. But he does, you know, he has droppings that I have to clean up, and he makes a general nuisance when he sheds. So every once in a while, a few times a year, he will shed his skin, and then hopefully when he sheds, it comes off as one piece, or it may come off in many pieces. Hence, where the having low vision and looking after this type of animal can be challenging. So this is why I thought it would be an interesting topic for household chores, because I find that when, besides you doing a normal chore with the eSight, you know, looking after my pets and stuff with the eSight is extremely helpful. So for my snake, his name's Marduk, for Marduk's tank, when I'm using the eSight, I have to utilize the zoom and the contrast definitely to see what's going on inside the tank. With my normal low vision, I can, you know, maybe see if there's something there that might be looks a little different. Say if it's shedding, or if it's a pile he left behind. but to really know if I'm trying to pick it up and so forth, I definitely need that contrast, and I can zoom in and look around. I have like a little scooper similar to a cat litter scooper that I can use to kind of pick up the shavings and droppings there. I can put them in a bag and toss them away. One of the interesting things that I find with this is utilizing the zoom and the contrast is that I can also use the tilt as well on the eSight Go. The eSight Go tilt was around the older models, but with the eSight Go, I'm not necessarily bending my head down as low, so I can tilt down and I can look in the tank, and then I can kind of go from there. And with the tilt, I find that it's a bit easier to kind of do a quick scan of the tank, and I'm not necessarily looking down and narrowing my field of view as much. Where if I just have it tilted down, I can look through the camera quickly and then look underneath quickly with my peripheral vision if I'm trying to spot the snake to make sure he's not trying to crawl out without me being aware of it. With the eSight Go, when trying to clean that stuff up, there's a lot of hand-eye coordination, right? So I have a snake that I want to make sure that I'm not bumping into. I want to use the tool to pick up anything he's left behind. I'm using the eSight to spot that as well. And then I'll also like lift up his cave, look underneath his cave, see if there's any shed skin there, see if there's anything behind. And I think eSight has really made that helpful, instead of having to be as close to that stuff, and I need to can actually be at a normal distance and do that. I did have an interesting experience once with him. This is just part of looking after animals in a terrarium, but he sometimes would have a habit of the ball pythons like to burrow, and he burrowed under his water dish, and his water dish is not a small dish, but it's a flat kind of rock-shaped thing, and he can curl up and hide under there. So one time I was looking for him and went, okay, the snake should either be in his cave, either on the branches, or maybe he sounded like he likes to go in the corner near one of the branches, and he wasn't around anywhere. I'm like, that's so weird. Like, where could he be? And I used my eSight to scan, and I used the zoom, and I used the contrast. And with that contrast, I could see underneath the water bowl, I could see a shadow, like a little hole. And I'm like, wait a moment, there shouldn't be a dip under the water dish. What's going on? And I lifted it up, and there he was curled up, looking at me like, "Yep, this is my home now. I made a little cave for myself." And he doesn't do it often, but every once in a while, he makes me worry, because he shouldn't get out, if that makes sense, right? You want to keep him enclosed and go from there. With the eSight, I do other things with the eSight. When refilling his water dish and so forth, there's a certain amount of water I want to keep in his bowl, and I can use my eSight in contrast to see that. And inside his tank as well, I have a hydrometer, and I also have a heat mat under there that has a certain temperature. I use the eSight to read those things as well. So if I want to make sure the humidity is the proper humidity for him, I don't have to get in, and lift up the hydrometer off the tank and look at it and then make sure it's right and put it back and stick it in place. I can just leave it on a spot, zoom in on it, and check it out from there, which is great with the eSight. And I love that, not needing to change the tank around and so forth. And I'm checking the temperature and so forth. I use my eSight with looking at the heat mat and looking at the temperature gun, and I don't have to struggle to see that, which I think is excellent. I also find that when looking after my other cats and stuff, dealing with the cat litter, the contrast is invaluable. Just cleaning up after them, with the scooper and so forth. But one of the things that I thought was interesting, if the cats are not necessarily the cleanest when it comes to around the cat litter, normally, unfortunately, I have to go by touch and be like, oh, they might have made a mess. Well, I can use the eSight up the contrast and go, oh, look at that. It kicked the cat litter out of the box, and I can use the vacuum to quickly fix that up and make that go away, which I think is great, because I keep it very nice and clean, and it doesn't tend to be as much of a burden. So I find eSight has been great for those type of household chores with me looking after my animals, and just utilizing the tilt, the zoom, and the contrast has been excellent, and going from there. There is I guess I'm going to add this to. For my snake, there is a day bulb and a red for the days with a white light, and a red light I use for a night cycle. And so if I'm looking at him at night and using the eSight, there are changes to how much contrast I'm going to use for the day and the night cycle of the bulbs. And with the red light being on at night, sometimes to see him can be a challenge depending on where he's located in the tank and trying to find him. And that's also where the contrast comes in quite handy. He's also very much more active at night. So I can actually, say, watching TV, and I might hear a noise or a clink in the tank because he's being destructive, and I can look at him and zoom in and be like, aha, he's moving a branch around, or he's pulling something a certain way if he's in hunting mode for food. And so I find that, using the contrast for that is really interesting and something is very helpful. And that's very specific for a certain type of creature, but I just thought, from a interesting point of view, if someone does have reptile, it does help with the different types of bulbs and having that contrast. Okay, so that's my discussion of animal enclosures and looking after the cat. And then next we're going to have Leah talking about the ceiling fan. So Leah, I'll let you take it away.
All right, thank you. So usually when we discuss tilt, we are at the lower levels of looking downward. And this, with cleaning ceiling fans, we're actually going to have our tilt at 0, so you're angled upward. I have several different styles of ceiling fans. I have matte white, which is not shiny. I have shiny black ones, and then I have like a wood grain for outside. And so having those different kinds of materials, the eSight actually did really good. Now, I myself did not have to use contrast to see the dust on the fans. That might not be the same for everybody. The one thing I would recommend is not to have the light itself that the fan blades are attached to on, because that could be pretty bright and overpower the device and everything. So you want to make sure that your lighting is coming from someplace else in the room, that you're not just staring up into a light that's turned on. So the easiest way to check to see if your fan blades are dusty, other than just to know that they are, to assume well, it's been several months or years since we've cleaned them, they're bound to be dusty, is to actually stand back a little bit. Because if you are standing directly underneath the fans, you are going to be craning your neck back. I mean, doing almost a back bend to see the fan blades, just from where the camera is. Even on a tilt of 0 with it being upward, you still have to look pretty far back in order to look that high up at your ceiling. So stand further back, look at them, utilize your zoom, and a lot of the dust is going to be more than likely on the top of the blade itself. There may be some dust on the bottom side that it's facing downward, but just not as much. So if they are extremely dusty, you might be able to concentrate your view on the edge of the fan blade, and you might be able to see, like, if it's really dusty or there's like little poofs of dust, rising above it type deal, creating its own little landscape up there and everything. So that may be a good indication that the fan blades are dusty. There's several different ways that you can go about cleaning said fan blades. The one that I like to use is, because it doesn't really involve depth perception. So I get a step ladder that has a handle on it, safety first, and get that step ladder, put it underneath the fan. Of course, the fan is turned off, always, always, always. And then I will get an old pillowcase. And you put the fan blade, individual fan blade, inside the pillowcase. And then you sort of like sandwich the open end around the fan blade, and then you just slowly slide it off. and you're applying some pressure. You don't want enough to where it's going to, like, you're not yanking the fan blade off or just messing up the fan itself. You just want to apply enough pressure to where that pillowcase, excuse me, that pillowcase can get press against the fan blade, and all of the dust inside or on that fan blade can then go inside the pillowcase, and it's not getting on the floor or in your mouth or anything like that. So at that point, depending on how dusty, you can either go outside and turn the pillowcase inside out and dust it out, and then go back and do the next fan blade, or you can just keep doing all the fan blades that way, stay up on the ladder there, and then you can again go out, turn your pillowcase inside out, dust it, empty the dust into the yard or the trash or wherever you want to put it, and you're good to go. Tyler, do you want to discuss what you use to clean your blades with?
Well, with the ceiling fan, I don't have ceiling fans anymore, but I something that I actually have a large telescopic Swifter brush. So I have a long handle that I push it, and it's telescopic, go about 6 feet long, and there's a Swifter dust mop on the end, and that's how I would use to clean the fan blades, and that's what I use to clean any of the vents near the ceiling for air intake in the house. I can zoom in with the eSight and I can see that type of dust accumulating, and then use that tool to brush it off. When Leah and I were talking about household chores, and she said about using a pillowcase to clean the fans, she taught me something much cleaner, much better way of not knocking stuff down. Because I find it once in a while, if I'm using the brush, occasionally I'll find dust on the floor and then have to break it to vacuum and so forth. So yeah, but that's what I've used for getting surfaces and stuff that are higher up, say the top of the mirror, in the flat area, and I want to clean it off, and I'll just take the extension handle and slide it up there, and just know it's going along the surface and picking it up. So for those that don't necessarily want to get on a step ladder and stuff, there are tools that you can use to clean ceiling fans and so in the bathrooms and in intake vents, which are great.
Yeah. And I have a problem with the Swiffer, myself using them, nothing against Tyler's method. That is completely fine. My issue is the depth perception of it and looking up to align it, and then also the fan not starting to turn while I'm trying to clean it. So that's where my issue. So I don't use that. I do use the Swiffers to like clean the TVs, dust on the TVs and things like that. But in regards to the fan blades, now you can do this with the eSight. If you were to get up on the step ladder and use the pillowcase method, then you would definitely probably take that zoom way down, because then you're looking into the creation of the of the fan blade if you have it on that much high, and being that close to it. But you can definitely do that, or you can just take it off and take the eSight off and clean the blade, and then go down and use the eSight to see if you missed any spots or anything like that. So that's how I clean fan blades and how I use my eSight to do so.
Perfect. Excellent, Leah. Thank you very much. That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, and helpful tip for sure. And that's great. All right, so those are the topics for household chores with the eSight, and I recommend experimenting, right? Like if you have different things that you're using and so forth around your house, and I find with the eSight, I can use that contrast and see if there's any dust and so on and so forth. One helpful hit for those that maybe out there, just as a comment, if you are using your eSight and you are seeing, say, maybe dust on a lamp and so on and so forth, don't mention it to someone thinking that, hey, they can clean it, because chances are if you can see it, that means it's your job to clean it. So just as a little hint out there, be like, hey, look, that lamp looks dusty. yeah, you're going to clean
Very
it. So,
true.
but in all honesty, when I first got the eSight, I was actually a little appalled. One of the lampshades I had was one of those kind of frilled lampshades, and I was looking at it with the eSight. I'm like, oh, why is it gray in them? And I realized, oh, that's unfortunately dust that I never saw before, and I can now see with my eSight, which was fascinating. It was great to see that, but then, once I saw that, it made it. I did a lot more cleaning. So just something to keep in mind in kind of a lighthearted way. All right. So thank you everyone for your topics. That was great. And if anyone has any questions here, feel free to raise your hand. And happy
Yep.
to
Nope.
uh,
Okay.
help with that.
Yep, there
And
we go.
so on and so forth. But Leah, is there anyone that has a question?
Yeah, Linda has a question, and yep, you already unmuted yourself, so go ahead, Linda.
Hi, actually, it's John. Linda's my wife.
Oh, okay.
The vision problems. We're interested in eSight. She recently was diagnosed with wet AMD, and she watches a lot of TV. And does the eSight Go help with that?
Yeah, it can help
I
with
can
TV
handle that
watching.
one.
Okay, sure. Go ahead, Colin.
Yeah, because I know Leah doesn't watch much TV. Yes, it does. I watch a lot of TV with it. And when I'm watching it, I like to have my eSight up and look under with my naked eye, and then use the eSight with it tilted down to spot stuff. So I'm a baseball fan, and TV shows so often switch from close up to wide shots, and if you're zoomed in on a wide shot, you don't want to be at that same zoom level for a close up, because then you're looking up somebody's nostril. And so that's why I like to lean back, have the camera tilted down, and look underneath. And I've had a lot of good success with the eSight Go. The image stabilization that it has makes a big difference. With previous eSights, your head movement would make the image jiggle, and this is much
Mm-hmm.
smoother. That jiggle is eliminated. So yeah, I watch game shows, something like Wheel of Fortune or Family Feud. I could not enjoy without the eSight, because I'd have to be a foot and a half away to see it. And now I can see those details, and I can see the scoreboard part of the football or baseball game. The evening news, I can read all the obnoxious graphics all over the screen. Some stuff that moves fast, like the little scrolling bar at the bottom, can be challenging, but once you get proficient, that's definitely doable. And I can read subtitles, which I could never ever do. Again, depending on the speed. I was watching a Japanese movie, and if there were 2 lines of dialogue, that was a little hard for me to read all of it, but I could definitely get the gist of it. And if it was just one, I could read it all. So yeah, it helps with TV quite a bit.
I see. Now we're kind of new at this. She was just diagnosed, but basically in the one eye, she says it's like looking through a piece of steel wool. She has light around the circle, and kind of gray and blurry in the center. So does eSight Go address that? That's kind of my basic question.
It depends on the individual, how the person sees their blind spot with the eSight when they're looking through the device. Some people will notice their blind spot diminish. Some people may not, but they might notice it might not be as heavy, and so forth. So it's very individual on how it addresses that blind spot in their eye. And where it is. So it's unfortunately with the eSight, it's very individual based, right? Like I can just kind of give a generality with it, sir. But it can it can be very helpful. The idea basically is that the eSight is sending the image to the peripheral vision of a user's eye, and then their brain is taking each of those peripheral images, going to each eye and then merging it together, and it's like someone seeing around their blind spot. It's the quickest way to explain it. But how well that works is very on person to person.
One more question. I don't want to dominate, but how do I get in touch with somebody to demo one of these or to try them?
So if you call our main company number, talk to the people there, they'll go through the various kind of screening questions to make sure your wife would be Linda would be a good candidate, and then from there you'll be transferred and set up for a home trial to try the eSight.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, Leah. Anyone else with a question?
No, sir.
Okay, so it looks like we're good. Well, if anyone does have questions or cleaning or anything like that, please feel free to reach out, and we'll be happy to assist with that. And thank you everyone for joining for this month's Vision Central. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone next month. Thank you.